Dear Mr. Ben, it's our pleasure to talk to you. And also many thanks to our friends from the Himalaya from UK for having us. Our first question, Mr. Ben, you traveled to several European countries in 2018, and including meeting the head of the German AfD in Switzerland. And can you talk more about your meeting with Ms. Weidel, who is one of the leaders of the German AfD party? Thank you.
Yeah, well, in 2018, I went to Switzerland and met with her, Ms. Weidel, and also with Beatrice van Storch and Sven van Storch. And then later in 2019, I actually went to Germany. I went to Berlin for 3 days and had extensive series of meetings with not just Alternatives for Deutschland, but some of the Jewish organizations there, a number of the rabbis, and other organizations associated with the freedom movement and the patriot movement. And so populists and people that are more nationalistic in their outlooks, like Alternative for Deutschland and other people. So I've spent a lot of time on Germany, and I'll announce here, one of the things we're working on is actually to launch, I hope before the end of the year, but early next year at the latest, is a War Room Berlin. We're gonna start launching some international war rooms, and one of our top priorities is Berlin. Germany is incredibly important to the West. It's incredibly important to our fight against the transnational criminal organization, which is the Chinese Communist Party, and we can't lose sight of that. And I'm very concerned that a lot of German industry and German economic and the globalists around Merkel, there are many of those that are very close to the CCP, and that's all got to be thwarted. And Germany's absolutely central in this great conflict we have between the West and the Chinese Communist Party.
Thank you, sir. And on September 26th, 4 weeks from now, the federal election will be held in Germany. And Mr. Miles Guo said publicly 4 weeks ago that the AfD will form the upcoming German cabinet after the September election. And today, the AfD has about 12% of the seats in the German parliament. And from 12% to forming the cabinet would be a giant leap forward. Do you also think that the AfD will win in September?
Well, number one, I never go. Miles has better instincts on this than I do. Miles has had so many correct forecasts, right? That at the time I go, Miles, where'd come up that with like the Wuhan lab and so many things that have happened on the vaccines. You know, Miles is always really very ahead of it, given his international contacts. Let's say this: I think that AfD is going to represent very strongly. And I believe you're going to see a shift. I think you're going to see a shift with AfD and other coalition partners, and they become a coalition, that you start to see a shift in German politics. Germany, to me, and particularly with the COVID, the CCP virus, is almost like Australia to a degree. They've so overreacted to this, and the authorities are so overreacted to it. You know, you've had a real movement among the lawyers and some of the doctors, some of the people that are really putting together the case to go to maybe the International Criminal Court or some other things to hold these pharmaceutical companies accountable, hold the CCP accountable, are really coming out of Germany. So you have these sprouts of real, resistance, and then you have the overlay of kind of the globalist, right, and the party at Davos, which is very deep in German politics. So I think this is a long fight. I think it's a tough fight, but I got to tell you, I really like the people that I see over there. I really like the Patriots with Alternative for Deutschland and a couple of other these groups. So I think Miles is right. I think you really have a surprise where at least you could put together a coalition. And if couldn't take the government and form a cabinet, at least could be enough significant minority block that they could have what I call command by negation. So nothing could be done. But I think Germany's got to rethink its relationship with Russia. It's probably its economic relationship with Russia, and it's really got to focus on those companies called the middle companies, companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Those companies have been eviscerated by the Chinese Communist Party, and there's really a strategy. The Chinese Communist Party comes to steal their intellectual property, steal everything related to their manufacturing, to really take it to make sure the slave labor of Dabei, ging was the slave labor. And so I think there's so many issues in Germany. And remember, I think that's why the show's so important, and why I want to start a war room Berlin and maybe have you guys help us, is that I just don't think people have the facts. They don't have the information, because the media over there never explains it. And I think once the German people see more facts, see more revelations, they begin to come, like, wow, that's what's happening in America. Joe Biden's in a free fall right now, in a total free fall. And the reason is more information is coming out about his illegitimate election on November 3rd. More information is coming out about how he's kowtowing to the CCP. More information is coming out every day about this debacle in Afghanistan. So, and I think the Afghanistan debacle is going to have a big impact on Germany. I know there was a report the other day, I think 1/3 of the sexual assaults of women in Germany are done by, I think, the Afghani and other parts of that population, fighting age males that have come into the country. So it's absent. People are shocked about it. So there's just so much going on right now within the world that I think that the AfD could actually do very well.
Thank you, sir. Should the AfD win the upcoming election in Germany, what do you think, who is the driving force for the victory, and what are the main reasons for that?
I think the driving force would be that great leadership they've got. They got these young leaders that we've already talked about, that I think are really kind of galvanizing what people look, I think, about Merkel and all the people around Merkel's party. They're older people. There's like a lot of old white guys, right? And I think Germany's looking for new, vibrant leadership. I think that's number one, is the AfD, I think, has real energy. Number two are the issues. And I think one of the things is actually just to put out more information. One of the things people are complaining about in Germany is that there seems to be a suppression of just information, and particularly people that have conflicting points of view, whether it's about the CCP virus, whether it's about the therapeutics, whether it's about the vaccines, whether it's about lockdowns. You've seen these huge demonstrations, which you haven't seen in Germany, huge demonstrations about freedom and about really a patriots movement. I think this is something that's really quite refreshing. And I think that that's going to be a very driving force in this. In addition, I think, and I know this from Germans I talk to, the more they understand about the Chinese Communist Party and its role, particularly One Belt, One Road, what it's trying to do in consolidating the Eurasian landmass, certain elements of the German politicians and the German business community just like here in the United States. There's no different between the city of London and Wall Street and Frankfurt, okay, the financial capital. There's no difference between the globalist corporations in America, the globalist corporations in England, and in Germany. They all want to be partners of the Chinese Communist Party. Why? They like the authoritarian control, and they particularly like the slave labor of Chinese people. That's obvious. I think you're seeing an awakening among German people as they get more information.
So, Mr. Bannon, I just want to ask a question. Do you like the G fashion? How important is G fashion for the whistleblower movement?
Well, look, I think the whistleblower movement is one of the top movements in the. Hey, guys, can we get Cameron in here for a second? The screen just went down. I think the whistleblower movement is one of the most important movements in the world. And what I really admire about Miles is the entrepreneurship of Miles Guo. It's whether he's anything that he knows about, like G News and GTV. I mean, the War Room would not be as big as it is if we didn't have the simulcast in the Mandarin translation, both on the screen and also verbally. And they've helped us get us into Japan. They've helped us get us into Australia and create huge audiences for it. So I know the entrepreneurial spirit of it. I think on Miles is that where does he find the time? And remember, I'm the one that came up with the idea of Miles doing the music. Because I said, Miles, you're talking about all these songwriters. Why don't you do it yourself? He says, don't have a good voice. He says, you got a tremendous voice. And now his songs, the latest song is #1 in the world, I think. Because Miles, when he puts his mind to it, particularly his creative aspect, it really is amazing. I think G fashion, and look, remember, I'm not a fashion horse. I dress pretty simply, right? So, but G fashion is clearly something he loves, and I think it's had a big impact. And I think one of the reasons it's had a big impact, it's so cutting edge, and there's so many quality people that have come and worked with it, from designers to people in the media area, marketing area. It's really galvanized people to show, I think, what China can do and what Miles calls new China and the new Chinese, that they're cutting edge. They have a taste that the world wants, and they want freedom. They want to be told what to do by Beijing. And Miles always reinforces, whether it's the whistleblower movement or G News, GTV, the music industry, G Fashion, it's all a different way for new China and the new Chinese, really young Chinese who want freedom, to express themselves creatively. So I think it's terrific. Like I said, the fashion part of it's a little beyond me because, as you can tell, I'm not exactly a fashion horse.
Thank you, sir. Miles Guo, Mr. Miles Guo has often said that you are his master, and he appreciates you very much. He is grateful to you for his huge success in the music history of mankind. And how did you encourage him to release his songs?
Miles, and I say this in all seriousness, Miles, and he teases me, I'm his master, and I say he's, my brother, right? But Miles, I really think, is becoming the George Washington of the Chinese people and leading the diaspora and helping to galvanize around something. I've been talking to Miles a lot about George Washington and about the history of George Washington and what he meant to the American people when we broke off from England. Like Dabei, ging, and the new China and the new Chinese, the new federal state is going to break off from the Chinese Communist Party and eventually destroy the Chinese Communist Party. On the music, I will definitely take credit. I will take credit, not for the artistic, but Miles has a very creative aspect to him. Everything about him, he tried to have a level of excellence. And I think it's one of the reasons young Chinese galvanize to him is they see somebody that is interested in excellence on the world stage, whether that's in fashion, whether it's in news, whether it's in his lifestyle, anything. And just on the music side, I was there and we were on the boat and I saw him working on these other projects and the music thing was kind of off to the side. And I said, you just ought to take charge of that. And I said, I wouldn't hire people to do it. I would just do your own songs. And, we talk a lot. We listen to a lot of Chinese music. We listen to a lot of modern Chinese music. Miles knows many, many musicians from his days in the hotel industry at Bannon, the great hotel he had in Beijing. So he knows everybody. We would sit there and listen to it. And I said, Miles, you can do this. So I did actively encourage him to actually to start singing and to have groups around and hire the best. Now, I will say I did not encourage him to dance. The dancing is 100% Miles, okay? That's 100% Miles. But the singing, and his voice is great. And look, we play, and I will tell you here in America, we play Take Down the CCP as our official music for the War Room. American people send us TikToks of the little kids dancing in front of their Take Down the CCP. It's really, and it's changed the attitude of the American people. And they're saying, hey, this is not about China. It's not about the Chinese people. This is about the Chinese Communist Party. So the song has been incredibly powerful as a tool to awaken people. And I told Miles, music and film and television and all of this is just so powerful in fashion. So I think you're seeing, but the key is Miles is the inspiration. But if you didn't have the new China and the new Chinese, you would never do it and never get there. And that's why I keep saying that freedom and democracy have to come to China, because if you look throughout the world, from the whistleblower movement to the new federal state to all the Chinese in Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Germany, where the Chinese people have the rule of law, where they have freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and particularly freedom of religion, the Chinese people prosper. If you set the rules for the Chinese people, they're prosper. They're family-oriented. They're law and order-oriented. They just want to get on with their life. They're kind of libertarians to a degree, that they're very traditional in their families, but they just want to be left alone, right? They want to be left alone with a de minimis amount of state intervention and just get on with it. And that's the power of old 100 names. That's the power of Dabei, ging. Remember, Dabei, ging hasn't gotten a break in 10,000 years. And that's why this time we live in is so extraordinary. And while Miles is kind of the George Washington, because we're very close to Dabei, ging, old 100 names, breathing the clean air of freedom and democracy in mainland China. And that's going to be something that hasn't happened in 10 or 15,000 years. And that's why it's a historic movement and a moment. And why, whether you're in Berlin or Germany or the United Kingdom, all are united in one thing. They want freedom for the Chinese people. And that's just an incredibly powerful element.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time, and best wishes to your father and your family. And you are our heroes. Thank you very much.
You guys are heroes to me. You're the tip of freedom. And let me tell you something. The impact you're having is tremendous. It's a huge impact. So that's why I'm so honored to do this every week. And I love the Himalayas, the new federal state, all the different farms, the whistleblower, Rule of Law Society, Rule of Law Foundation. It just, what you guys are doing is just incredible. And of course, the one and only Miles Guo.